Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this evening or morning, depending on where you're at, for this wonderful career webinar. I'm so excited to have you all. I'm going to give us a few minutes to let some people roll in before we kick it off. But thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are. I'm excited to welcome this wonderful and esteemed alum to share this amazing information and book. I actually got the gift from Susan Starcher, your book, so I've been reading it myself, so I feel like I have almost like the inside scoop to your presentation.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yes, yeah, I got to be at the office and Susan was very kind. Susan Starcher, by the way, everyone works in the alumni office and she is a dear person. If you ever email the alumni office, you probably deal with Susan and she is a pure peach. So if you ever deal with her, give her a big hello.
I will vouch for that.
All right, well, I think we've got our attendance, so I'm going to go ahead and welcome us. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to today's exciting career program, Enrich Your 2021, brought to you by your Vanderbilt Alumni Association and alumni Todd Miller. I'm Sarah Whitney Anderson, Assistant Director of Alumni and Student Engagement, and I'm so glad you could be with us from wherever you are. This program will last around 40 minutes with time at the end for questions. Please feel free to type those questions in the Q&A box down below. We will make sure that they are addressed in some way before our time is up. We are also recording today's session and we will post it on VU Connect so you can re-listen to this and share with any alumni friends. I'm so excited to have this speaker with us today. Todd Miller is an entertainment CEO who has extensively researched and aggressively experimented with the work-life equation for over a quarter century. While scaling the corporate ladder, Todd skillfully structured 2 sabbaticals, intentionally created a family through adoption, cycled coast to coast across 2 continents in support of children's charities, and explored more than 100 countries of all 7 continents. Drawing on Enrich principles, Todd built time wealth and passive income while working full-time. At age 53, the American-born author has retired on the Andaman Sea in Thailand, where he devotes his time to enriching connections with people and projects. So now I give it over to you, Todd.
Thank you so much, and hi everyone. I'm really thrilled to join you tonight. Many thanks to Vanderbilt for hosting this event and for its commitment to lifelong learning. Vanderbilt has a special place in my heart, and I give back whenever I can. This webinar is a good example. Recently, I served on the Alumni Association board, and that gave me a good excuse to travel back to campus from time to time to see firsthand all the exciting things that are taking shape. It's been quite the journey for me since I graduated in 1988. After Vanderbilt, I pursued an unconventional path. Back then, Americans didn't do gap years, but that's exactly what I did when I headed to Asia. And that gap year evolved into a colorful international career in the entertainment business. And just over a year ago, I traded that career for the beach life of tropical Thailand, where I now call home. And that move fulfilled an aspiration to be my own boss from my very first life plan. Much of my working career was on behalf of a major Hollywood studio, where I helped to develop the Asian markets. And more recently, for 8 years, as chief executive, I led Asia's largest independent pan-regional broadcaster. But enough about me, because today it's about you and how to enrich your year. Just about every person on the planet aspires for this year to be richer, fuller, and more joyful than the last. Do you all agree with me on that? Is it time to make this year count? Then let's do it and dive right in. And I'll begin with a question. If you could do anything in the world right now, what would you do? I started incubating these enrich ideas in my final semester at Columbia Business School, where I was flabbergasted how brilliant people, as many of my classmates are, seem to make incredibly short-term career decisions based on the size of a signing bonus. Can we be bought so easily? I wondered. As my career evolved, so did my obsession with some fundamental questions about work, life, and the relationship between time, money, and success. For the past 25 years, I've extensively researched and aggressively experimented with the work-life equation, and I wrote Enrich to share some of my trial and error learning. Many professionals wrestle with these same questions. We routinely face a tug-of-war between competing priorities that can suck the life out of life. Work or family, time or money, happiness or success. For many, the reality of modern professional life, chasing that elusive carrot, looks something like this. We're often so busy climbing the ladder that sometimes we don't even recognize when it leans against the wrong wall. After all, we are educated to be successful professionals. But what about success at life? Well, they just don't teach that at school. In short, we have to wing it. And in the process of winging it, we routinely encounter three core challenges. And these challenges diminish life satisfaction. The first is financial insecurity. Most people equate job security with income security. But in 2021, there's no job security. The second is time poverty. A global study by Ernst & Young identified insufficient time among 4 of the 5 biggest hurdles that professionals face. And finally, there's a disconnect with personal priorities. How we spend our days does not add up to what matters most. We frequently confront a demoralizing gap between how we wish that we could spend our time and how we actually spend our time. But none of us are here to dwell on the problem. We're here to discuss some actionable solutions. Enrich addresses these core challenges. At this moment in a raging pandemic, as people everywhere rethink everything, where they live, how they work, what they want out of life, we have a clarifying opportunity to reset and to recalibrate. The goal is to make life delicious, to create the life that you want, and to live it on your terms. Enrich provides a framework to empower you to take control. And this process takes a business approach to personal optimization using time-honored business techniques. Most self-enrichment books ignore financial considerations. They treat money as a dirty word when considering life's big questions. However, we cannot ignore the fact that money matters, especially for high achievers. And so today, I will focus on 6 themes that can contribute to enriching your year. Please be willing to stretch your mind, as some of these strategies challenge conventional wisdom, and quite possibly your own. The starting point is intentionality, which is being deliberate and purposeful with your time. Why is intentionality so powerful? Because it involves taking control. And research suggests that the more in control that you feel, the more satisfied you are in life. So let's rewind back to New Year's Eve and try to recall the euphoria and the hopefulness for this year. And I wonder, how many of you made New Year's resolutions? And now, I really wonder, how many of you are still sticking to those resolutions? The thing about New Year's goals is they're usually inherently personal. Rarely do we commit to work goals on New Year's Eve. Instead, we commit or recommit to whatever we think will improve our lives in the coming year. Yet, 80% of New Year's goals fail, and most are forgotten within 6 weeks by Valentine's Day. It's not enough to just set goals. Intentionality is required to get the desired results. If most New Year's goals fizzle by Valentine's Day, then how do the high achievers do it? As part of my research, I spent quality time with multiple world record holders who each had set multiple world records. I mean, that represents some serious intentionality. I wanted to understand their strategies and techniques for goal achievement and goal setting. And I will distill their strategies into 3 key points. The first is they rigorously practice intentionality. Second, they cultivate conviction by pursuing authentic goals. The secret sauce to any compelling goal is authenticity, how it resonates with your values and priorities. And finally, a big goal can be daunting, even paralyzing, and world-class achievers recognize that, which is why they conquer large objectives by thinking big and acting small. Let me explain what that means. This involves visualizing the intended outcome and picturing in vivid detail what success looks like, and then incrementalizing to get there. Visualization, however, is much more nuanced than just imagining the rainbow on the horizon. It anticipates potential obstacles and how to mitigate them. After visualizing the goal, then reverse engineer. Establish intermediate micro milestones or increments that bridge the present with the intended outcome, and then take baby steps to progress toward the immediate milestone in front of you. Let me give you a real-world example. Moonshots are celebrated because they are rare, radical breakthroughs. However, incremental advancement drives most significant progress. In fact, putting a man on the moon, the very definition of a moonshot, is actually a case study in visualization and incrementalism. John F. Kennedy provided the vision, and NASA developed a series of incremental advancements, which we know of as the Apollo space program, that culminated with that giant leap for mankind. So that's wonderful, you may be thinking, but let's try to bring this back down to earth, because this is 2021 and the world sort of, kinda feels out of control. When the morning commute involves moving from your couch to the kitchen table, it is natural to feel powerless and victimized by this situation. But I have a solution which anyone can do anywhere in the world at any time, and you can start right now. And that is to set daily intentions, to create a purpose that compels you each day. So tomorrow morning, when you get out of bed, begin the day intentionally. Ask yourself, what will make this day a great day? Not an average day, not just another Wednesday, but what will make tomorrow a great day? And consider that question professionally, personally, and financially. What do you most want to get out of this very day? And then, with intention, get on with it. A delicious life does not happen accidentally. It requires compelling goals and relentless intentionality to get to where you want to go. Fortunately, we have some tools to help identify, organize, and segment our priorities, such as this hierarchy of priorities. When thinking about priorities, I like to classify them into 4 categories to direct my focus. The highest priorities are non-negotiable and stand the test of time. Other priorities have a time element, those important now versus those important later. And finally, the nice to haves. Whether tackling a daily to do list or a life plan, understanding this hierarchy will help you navigate decisions big and small. Because life, after all, is the aggregation of thousands of discrete choices. And we often say that life is a journey. And yet, in the journey of our lives, really the only journey that really matters, we usually travel without a map and without a rudder. We drift. And when we drift, sometimes we end up where we don't want to go. And sometimes we go nowhere at all. Successful companies create business plans to ensure that you get to where you want to go. The life plan serves as your personal map. It blends your highest aspirations across various time horizons, and it should inject a strong sense of wow and excite you, pull you toward continuous progress. Because the more you plan, the more you improve the probability of success, of getting where you want to go. And as you consider all the things that you might accomplish, life planning is an immersion into the pleasure of possibility. Now let's switch gears and talk about money. And I'll show how biology and the ancient Aztecs fit into this discussion. I believe that everyone wants to be financially secure, but many professionals lack a sense of urgency. Often, we implicitly operate on a 40-year time frame. We embark on careers in our 20s, and we hope to exit, if we're lucky, sometime in our 60s. And the thinking goes, then we'll be able to do what we wish that we could have done all along. How crazy is that? Yet that is the default setting for which most professionals accept. A pandemic is a really good reminder of the value in having financial security. The US economy shed over 9 million jobs last year, the most in any year since records began in 1939, and nearly double the number from the 2009 financial crisis. Worse, MarketWatch says that 50% of all Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Even if you view the pandemic as a once-in-a-generation event, the past 25 years are littered with one-off events. The Great Recession, 9/11, the dot-com bust, and the Asian financial crisis. And those are just the exogenous shocks. Then there's the long-term downward pressures of corporate consolidation, globalization, outsourcing, and technological disruption that relentlessly chew up industries and those precious white-collar jobs. In biology, your resting metabolic rate is the rate at which your body burns energy when entirely at rest. Whoops. This happens naturally, regardless of what you're doing. It even happens while you sleep. And your income should accrue the same way. How to do that? You turn your assets into productive, income generating sources of cash that you can reliably earn without expending your time. And this is income that you can count on coming in month after month. Instead of working for money, make your money work for you. And this may require a mindset shift toward prioritizing cash flow over capital gains. Here's why. Capital gains can make you wealthy, but since they are situational and unpredictable, they don't necessarily create financial security. Some investors may do well on a trade, but But what we're trying to achieve is something more dependable. Think of it as creating your own recurring payday. We're trying to build income streams that are passive, meaning they require none of your time. They are recurring and predictable so that you can rely on them. They are tax efficient because what counts isn't so much what you make, but what you keep. And finally, that are diversified. We discussed how the best way to achieve long-term goals is to visualize and then incrementalize. This especially applies to financial goals. To visualize your financial future, an Aztec temple is a really good metaphor. Those majestic structures in Central America have strong foundations that support multiple higher tiers, and they were built layer by layer to last. You build financial security the same way. And regardless of your present financial situation, there is a surefire way to double the likelihood to hit your financial goals. And that is to do what 75% of Americans do not: make a financial plan. Money Magazine says those with written financial goals are more than twice as likely to hit them. And the Wall Street Journal reports that people who look forward 10 years or more are dramatically better equipped financially than those with shorter horizons. And finally, here is some wisdom from perhaps the world's most respected investor to drive home the urgency to accelerate financial security. So now that we've addressed income security, let's explore that eternal question. When does more money lead to more happiness? Well, on a macro level, various studies show that as societies grow richer, they don't necessarily grow happier. Just think about rich Western countries that are plagued by high levels of depression. And numerous studies on a micro level, including one by a Nobel laureate, indicate that after a certain point, increases in income do not result in equal or any improvements in life satisfaction, that there's diminishing marginal benefit after some point. And so at what point exactly is enough enough? In 2018, researchers looked at income satiation internationally using Gallup World Poll data. In North America, they found that income satiation occurs at $105,000 or $115,000 for the highly educated. But here's the kicker. In certain parts of the world, they found that incomes beyond satiation can make people less happy. To be clear, I'm making a qualitative and not a quantitative point. We do not need as much money as we think. So if more money doesn't directly translate to more happiness, that's not to say that there isn't some relationship between money and happiness. Once basic needs have been met, it's how you spend the money that impacts happiness. And there are three ways to buy happiness. The first is to buy some extra time by outsourcing certain tasks. The second is to buy shared experiences. The joys from toys do not last long. Just observe any kid a few hours after Christmas presents are opened. That is hedonic adaptation. For long-lasting and meaningful satisfaction, research shows that experiences are the most consistent sources of joy, especially if those experiences are shared with people whom we most care about. And finally, spending on others, regardless of the amount, makes us more happy than spending on ourselves. And this phenomenon has been observed across cultures and with the same magnitude of happiness increase. If you're keeping score, so far we've addressed intentionality and the money issues. And now we'll focus on work hack strategies. And you may be surprised what super chickens and Japanese salarymen can teach us. To frame this discussion about work satisfaction, I want to tell you about a genetics experiment. A geneticist at Purdue thought that he could boost egg output by breeding the most prolific hens. After a few generations, he expected this to result in a high-performance flock. And so in one cage, he placed average hens, the control group. In another cage, he placed a test group of high achievers, the super chickens. Which group do you think was more productive? Several generations later, the control group produced more eggs than at the start of the experiment. And those super chickens, well, they ended up killing each other. Only 1/3 survived, and those that lived were pecked bare. This genetics experiment offers profound sociological insights. Whenever you put a bunch of talented and ambitious individuals in a defined space, chances are they will begin to peck each other bare. Competition for jobs, advancement, deals, clients, and survival can be fierce. You may not be able to tame your work environment, but you can control how you engage in that environment. You'll spend 1/3 to 1/2 of your life working. Professional satisfaction plays an outsized role in life. It's hard to be happy in life if you're unhappy at work. In the book, I discuss 7 work hacking strategies. Today, I'll focus on the first 2. But first, let's establish some more context. According to Gallup, more than 75% of employees experience burnout on the job. And the World Health Organization even classifies burnout as an occupational phenomenon. And COVID, unfortunately, has intensified this situation. The first work hack strategy is to not focus on the money. And I know what you're probably thinking right now, that I'm crazy. But please hear me out and consider this job satisfaction litmus test. Do you enjoy your work so much that you would voluntarily sacrifice 20% of your salary? To improve career and job satisfaction, do not make work decisions based primarily on the paycheck. And this is opposite to the behavior that I observed among my business school cohorts. By taking money out of the equation, or at least downgrading its importance, you shift the focus from extrinsic rewards, such as money and status, toward intrinsic rewards, such as accomplishing something meaningful. To improve job satisfaction, focus on job content, the impact of your work, on the personal growth and skill development that you gain through your work, on non-tangibles such as intellectual stimulation and social interactions, and focus on your value add. By spotlighting the opportunity rather than the reward, you stand to maximize both professional and personal satisfaction. In 2019, the work management platform Reich did a deep dive into the disparity between unhappy and happy employees. Unhappy employees, it turns out, prioritize compensation. However, job content and flexibility win among happy employees. Back to that litmus test. If you're willing to take a 20% pay cut, this reveals 2 things. First, that you have a reasonable level of financial security. And second, that you highly value the intrinsic rewards from your job. The second work hack strategy is to work less. There are diminishing returns to both the quantity and quality of our output. After all, we are not machines. And so how to work less? Cut out those time sucks. Concentrate your work energy on the most productive, value-add uses of your time. Fewer hours on the job does not mean fewer quality hours. In August 2019, Microsoft ran an experiment in Japan, a country known for its intense work culture. The Japanese even have a term for death by overwork. So Microsoft Japan implemented a 4-day work week, and they assessed the year-on-year change in productivity. If the Japanese subsidiary worked 20% less, you'd expect productivity to decrease, right? Well, guess what happened? Productivity increased 40% by employees working 20% less. Beyond squeezing your high-quality work output into fewer hours, there's an even more radical way to work less, the sabbatical. In my career, I've taken 2 sabbaticals, one within, the other in between roles, and I highly recommend this enriching experience. Ask yourself, would you make better or different career choices if you didn't focus on the paycheck? And would you be more satisfied personally and professionally if you could work less or even take a sabbatical? If so, then figure out a way to employ these strategies. And that may mean figuring out how to accelerate financial security so that work becomes a choice and not an obligation. Optionality is the ultimate work hack. Our 5th topic tonight is happiness habits. In the past year, 2 out of 5 American adults reported symptoms of anxiety or depressive disorders, a situation inflamed by COVID. These habits can help. The behavioral scientist Nicholas Epley from the University of Chicago says happiness is not a permanent state. He compares happiness to a leaky tire. And just as we have to pump air into a tire from time to time to keep it inflated, we need to regularly infuse our lives with the ingredients that elate and enrich. In the book, I devote a full chapter to what I call these 8 essentials that inflate life and make it delicious. And I argue that instead of trying to achieve a delicate and exact work-life equilibrium, we're much better served by integrating the spheres of our lives into a cohesive and complete whole. Because work-life balance requires constant perfection. It's binary. If one side is up, that means the other must be down. So change the paradigm. Integrate your priorities into a peaceful coexistence, making sure that over time you infuse your life with the elements that make it delicious. Which poses an interesting question. We've just discussed the benefits of working less. So how have we adapted to work from home in the past year? The good news is, according to a recent Wall Street Journal report, that 88% of workers say they're just as efficient or more so at home as in the office. But there's a twist. In work from home, we are always on and often working much more. One study says workers on average are putting in 26 extra hours a month. In pre-COVID times, and I know that sounds like ancient history, but in pre-COVID times, commuting to work often served a useful purpose. It created a clear dividing line between work and home. We frequently crossed and blurred that line, but the line was there. And then work came home during COVID, and now it's here to stay, perhaps long term. And so we no longer even have a clear boundary. More than ever, we need an off button. The solution? Impose discipline. Actually, impose 5 disciplines. The first discipline is to demarcate, to create that off button. It's a judgment call where to establish those boundaries affecting meals, evenings, weekends, and holidays. But the failure to demarcate will mean that work has the potential to creep in and possibly pollute every other aspect of your life. The second discipline is to discern. How and with whom we spend our time greatly affects life satisfaction. Our choices matter. A really good question to ask after any interaction or experience is, how did that experience make me feel? Do I feel energized or do I feel drained? Discernment means no is sometimes the right response. The third discipline is to delegate, to maximize the things that produce enjoyment and to minimize or eliminate the things that deflate, both at home and at work, if possible. Reclaim your time. The fourth discipline is to protect your downtime. Athletes need recovery time. So do professionals to prevent burnout. To protect your downtime, make sure that you get adequate sleep at consistent times. If you shortchange sleep, you might get a couple extra work hours. But with decisions and interactions, quality is usually much more important than quantity, and sufficient sleep can turbocharge energy levels. Second strategy to protect your downtime is to treat weekends like vacations. One study found that executives who treat the weekends as a vacation are consistently happier, even if they don't travel anywhere or spend any extra money, than those who spend the weekend like a work week. And finally, unplug from tech and take a break from screens. The discipline of detox and immersing yourself in natural environments as much as you can is really the antidote to all the experience and lockdowns that we've experienced over the past year. And we've arrived tonight at the final topic, time. And here's a provocative question. Do you consider yourself committed or promiscuous with your time? There are two currencies in life, money and time. Money gets all the attention, but time has the biggest impact on life satisfaction. Time is full of contradiction. It's a commodity, free and abundant, but it's also priceless and scarce and non-renewable. During the research for this book, I interviewed scores of high achievers around the world, and overwhelmingly, almost all define success as mastery over their time. How we think about time markedly influences our behaviors and correlates with happiness. One study conducted by UCLA's Anderson School of Business asked 4,000 people which they would choose, time or money. Can you guess how those 4,000 people responded? How would you respond to that question? 2/3 said they prioritize money over time. But the 1/3 who chose time over money were on average statistically happier and more satisfied with life. And this research factored gender, occupation, marital and parental status, among other variables. Let's get granular. A typical day for an employed American looks like this. If we spend more than 5 hours a day on leisure, why are we so unhappy? Could it mean that we're making the wrong choices in how we spend our time? The Global Web Index calculates that we spend 142 minutes a day consumed by social media. In trying to understand why people don't exercise more, a Rand Corporation paper had the same conclusion. We have more free time than generally recognized, and we spend most of it looking at screens. I quote the 2019 World Happiness Report. Americans are unhappy due to fundamental shifts in how they spend their leisure time. The data is clear. In our relationship with time, we are promiscuous. Think about the common expression, make time. Making time means just that, relentless, deliberate, directed effort. In the book, I walk through 6 strategies to create time wealth, because when you control your time, you control your life. And let's look at the first strategy to pivot your mindset. We usually think about time in scarcity terms, rather than think about how little time that you have. Consider the abundance of time that you have going forward. Consider all the hours and days that you can fill with purposeful activity. If you sleep 7 hours each night, that leaves 17 hours each day, 119 hours each week, and more than 6,000 hours each year to accomplish what's most important to you. And this abundance mindset inspires, empowers, and provides a damn good reason to get out of bed in the morning if you use the time intentionally. Let's begin to wrap up with a proposition. Imagine you have a 25-hour day, while the rest of the world revolves around a 24-hour cycle. You have the gift of time, an extra hour. Now consider, how would you spend this extra hour? Why? Would this hour materially improve your life? If this magic hour would improve your life, how can you perform some magic with your schedule to make time for it? I hope that I have introduced some strategies that can enrich your year and make 2021 delicious. As the vaccination program in the States rapidly rolls out, and we begin to contemplate what a post-COVID world might look like, I will leave you with a final lingering thought. Do we return to normal or strive for something better? Thank you for the privilege of your time, and I'd be happy to address a few questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Todd. That was great. I have a whole page of notes here myself, and I read the books.
Okay.
I was so
Great.
So that is great. Really quick, I am going to go ahead and drop the survey link if y'all wouldn't mind filling that out for us. But yes, this is time for questions. So you can put those in the Q&A, or I'm also filtering the chat. And as people continue to put those in, Todd, we actually already had some put in, so I'll read those out to you.
Okay.
When did you realize you were overworking and wanted a change?
In my mid-20s. And I actually had a few experiences early in my career that made me very sensitive to these work-life issues. And I guess for me, one of the major catalysts was that I was tasked with doing a high-profile and strategically important deal for the Hollywood studio that I was working for. And all eyes were on me. And the divisional president was even calling me for updates. And keep in mind, I'm a 20-year-old recently minted MBA. And so I did what any ambitious MBA would do. I pushed hard to strike the most possible, the best possible deal that I could do. And I pushed too hard. And so I received a terse message from the counterparty at 6 p.m. on a Friday night that said, "Thanks for your efforts, but there is no deal." And this was before the time of cell phones. And so I freaked out and I completely lost my balance that weekend. And, those agonizing hours from 6 p.m. Friday to 9 p.m. Monday were just, beyond miserable. And so when Monday morning rolled around, I groveled to the client and I salvaged the deal. But I also realized that as my career progressed, so would the magnitude of the deals. And the stakes are only going to get bigger. And that if I did not figure out a way, a systematic process for me to stay grounded when things at work fall apart, that I will fall apart personally. And I was unprepared to let that happen. And so I think that really that is one of the triggers that caused me to begin to prioritize all the things that are important to me outside of work. And really, when you think about work and life, it's all about proportionality. Work and career is important, but it should take its proportional place in our lives and not dominate. And if you don't take any other message from this book and from this webinar, I hope that is the message, is to just make what's important, make it proportional in your life.
That's great. Thank you for sharing, Todd. Okay, so I think I've got this next question, but those that submitted to me, let me know if I mess it up. I think I get paid enough, but I chose to live in a bigger city and the cost of life is higher, but I do love my work. Any recommendations on how to adjust?
Yeah, look, a year ago, I would have said, reconsider, because the price tag of having a high salary means that you have a high cost of living associated with that salary. And a high cost of living may in fact result in a lower quality cost of life. And so I would have said, be geographically flexible. And that in pure financial terms, accepting a lower salary and a lower cost of living may make you better off, both financially and emotionally. And given this massive remote working experience that we've all experienced in the past year, that makes such a transition even more doable and possible. And so I would say, consider the question financially and do the math. And there's definitely a trade-off between, cost of living and compensation. And often you can make a pretty good trade by moving to a lower cost of living location. And at the same time, consider that move qualitatively. And then, like any large issue in life, do the math. Numerate and do the math. And then that'll help inform the right decision for yourself.
All right, I believe this is our last question, but if anyone has another one, just feel free to put it in the Q&A or the chat. So the last question submitted to me was, any suggestions on how to talk with my supervisor about cutting back when I'm feeling overworked?
Sure. The most important suggestion is to always position your ask and to position your conversation from the perspective of the company. In other words, don't tell the company what's in it for yourself. Tell your supervisor or your company what's in it for them. You know, in the movie Jerry Maguire, there's a great line, help me help you. And you should position any conversation with your supervisor or your company in a way that outlines the benefits to them. And particularly, if you're proposing or asking to scale back, then what are the potential concerns of the company and how might you mitigate those? And if you identify up front what those concerns are, and if you offer some proactive discussions to mitigate them, then that'll show that you've reasoned this out well, and you have, I think, presented a really good case. And so I will give you a real example. In my final year and a half of employment, I actually went to my company and said that at this point in my life, I need more time. And I proposed to the company that I scale back 20%. And I didn't ask for something without giving anything. And so I suggested to the company, give me 20% extra time and I'll readily agree to a 20% pay cut. But here's the benefit for you, company. I will maintain 100% of my KPIs. And so that's a trade-off that no company could say no to, because you're making the company whole. And what I discovered in my work performance is arguably my performance actually improved by my working less, just because to get everything done, I was much more concentrated and focused. I cut out those time sucks. And so my personal experience with this is it mirrors the Japanese salarymen experience, that Microsoft witnessed in Japan. And so, I would encourage you to just think about the company's perspective and make your ask based on that perspective.
I think that's great. I wholeheartedly agree. And I love the anecdote along with that. That's very helpful. So thank you. It looks like we do not have any more questions. So Todd, thank you so much for sharing this information, sharing about these great strategies in your book. I am personally so thankful that you wanted to hang out with some Vanderbilt alumni so that we could hear about this wonderful opportunities and program, if you will. So I dropped the feedback link, but I also want to encourage everyone to go check our career resources and events on our Vanderbilt Alumni Association webpage, VU Connect. Later this week, I will turn this webinar into a YouTube link and send that out, so that will be easily accessible, and that can also be found on our webinar page. Later this week, we also have another webinar on Thursday with career coach Hallie Crawford. So I hope to see you there. But I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, Todd. If we can ever do anything for you, you just let us know. But I hope everyone has a wonderful, safe evening or morning. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.